Welcome back, everyone, to the Electric Coaches channel. Today I'm still working with the figures that were refurbished in the previous video. The figures you see before you are some of those figures that were part of that refurbished project. I moved some of those figures to my work table where I am reassembling the figures that came apart. I also intend to prime these figures using a white primer to cover the blemishes that were left behind as a result of the prime process. For example, if I show you this figure, this is a Reginald Rutledge figure that I customized. This is a tight end, and the camera isn't really getting it, but there's paint residuals still left on the figure. Moreover, the plastic is rather dingy from the paint residuals. I have another figure here. It's got a little bit more on it. If you look at the hands of the figure, they look slightly tinted. That's where I painted the gloves on this figure. But overall, the figure is dingy from the refurbished process. Maybe if we can get down and look at that leg a little bit, you can see the paint that was left behind. So the priming that I'm going to do is going to cover any paint imperfections that were left on the figure. I have here another Reginald Rutledge figure that I primed, and it's covered in white primer. All the blemishes on it have been covered. Also, the platform the figure stands on, I had to paint it green. So this figure is ready to have a uniform painted on it now. And that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to begin the process of getting these guys ready, like these guys here on the board, along with the guys on my work table. I'm going to get these figures put together and primed and ready to be painted into a team. I'm now ready to start priming my figure, and this is one of my tackle figures that I intend to prime, and I'm going to cover this figure using white primer. And the primer I'm going to use is by Model Masters. It's a white primer, and I'm going to simply cover the figure using this product. So I want to open my jar here, and this primer has been used before in previous projects that I've done. So I'm going to get my stir stick, and I want to stir this primer because we want to get it well mixed. You know, because a lot of the ingredients in the jar, it settles at the bottom. Okay, so we got it stirred. So put our stir stick away here. I have a small brush, not very big. You know, you don't want to use a brush like that. That's too big. See? Use a small brush like so. And you want to use a clean brush. You know, if you used the brush before and if it's got any color on it, then that brush, the color on that brush, will bleed off into the primer. So I have my figure here in hand, and I just simply take my brush dab it in, and I begin spreading it on the figure. And I do this until the figure is completely covered. Now some of you may be wondering, why doesn't this figure have a platform? Well, during the refurb process, the figure became separated from the platform. So when I handle these Reginald Rutledge figures, I prime it up before I remount it to the platform, because I glued the legs and the torso back together, and I want this glue and this primer to set so that it will work together to hold this figure in place so I can handle it. So this is the start right here. I began priming the back of the figure, and it's coming and it's turning all white like it's supposed to, and we're covering those blemishes. So while I have it here in the front, I'll just start applying primer to the front of the figure, especially around the waistline and the crotch area of the figure, because that's where my glue is. So we're going to do this same technique to all the figures. We're going to give each figure a coat of primer, whether the figure needs it or not, because I want a uniform look. Also, the primer that you apply on your figure, it gives the top coat a better surface to cling to. Because yes, you can paint your figure with just paint. You don't have to prime. But I like to do it for this reason, to cover these blemishes. Especially on this is especially true for refurbished figures. So we almost got this guy covered. Just gotta do the shoulder. You gotta do the other side of the helmet. Get that armpit there. So once I get this guy covered, I set him off to the side, and then I move to the next figure. Okay. Now, this guy's pretty much covered. Got him all covered in white primer. I didn't do the foot and the calf area because I still have to mount this figure on its platform. And once I get the figure and the platform glued together and it dries, I'm going to come back later and I'm going to prime around the ankle, the calf, and the foot and the platform all into one and let that dry. So we're going to set that player right there. I'm going to allow him to dry. And eventually, like the guy I showed you earlier, he's going to end up just like this guy. Primed and mounted on a platform. While our figure is drying here, I'm going to show you the next phase of what I do after I prime all the figures. I have here a Buzzball Mr. Everything figure. And this figure has already been primed. So this figure's next phase, the next phase for this figure would be to paint the platform green. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment. The paint that I use to do that is Apple Barrel Green Clover. This is one color you could use, and you can use any color you want, but I like to stay traditional with my electric football figures. They have green platforms, so this is one color paint that I use. Another green that I use, which is a bit darker, this is a Craftsman, a Craft Smart green paint called Holiday Green. I've seen some guys, they just leave the figure, they leave the stand all white. I've seen some guys have blue stands, red stands, red platforms or blue platforms, whichever one you choose. But we're going to paint ours green. Now this paint, this Apple Barrel paint, you don't have to stir it. It's a water-based paint, and it's very balanced, and it's also very inexpensive. I believe I paid 50 cents for this bottle of Apple Barrel paint. So I'm going to get a little bit in my cap. Set my cap right there. The bottle is very tall and lean, so you don't want to sit it out in the open because you can accidentally knock this over. So I move it off to the side over here and I put it up against something. Simply take my brush and begin spraying the paint over the platform. Now when I do this, I'm not worried about getting paint on the foot of the figure because I have to paint the shoes on the figure. So when I do that, when I paint those shoes, I'll use that time to paint over the areas that may have gotten green paint on it. But for the most part, for painting this platform, I can just go freely with it with the green paint. Now I'm using a larger paintbrush here to paint this area. Why? Because the area is so open. I don't need a small brush to do that. The notch right here where the hook of the rookie base fits at, inside there it's white also, so you want to put your brush in there and get that green. This Apple Barrel paint, usually you have to paint with a second coat, so I gotta let this first coat dry. Turn them around so I can get to the other side there. That's a space right there, right here on the outside of the left foot. Got to get some green in there. Okay, and you also want to make sure you get the edges of the platform. The back edge and the front edge, basically all around the platform. But again, you don't have to paint this if you don't want to. You can leave it as is. But just for me, I like to stay traditional. Also, it helps the figure to stand out when you put the uniform on. Okay. That's one coat of green paint. Got a little bit of residuals, a little bit of plastic shavings mixed in there. You want to be careful to have a clean area when you do your paint jobs, because things like plastic shavings from your figures, if you're customizing, can get on your figures if the paint is wet on them. I have a little bit there. Brush it off. Also, you want to have a paper towel, because when you get the wet paint on the bottom of the stand, you want to pass that figure over the paper towel like so to get the paint residuals off of the bottom side of the platform. So now that I have that done, I'm going to set this guy off to the side and let him dry. So this process I do for each figure. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm cutting it short. I'm showing you a primed guy, and then I move to a platform on another figure. But if I wasn't doing this video, I would prime all of my figures first. Then I would go to the platform and paint each platform on the figure. If the figures are disassembled, I would assemble them, get them put together, then prime, then paint the stand, and move on to the next phase. So I want to show you one more thing that I do, that I'm going to do to this team in the next segment.